Or
Little twinkle.
it's already. Hello everybody, my name is Alfio Lococo and I'm a student advisor.
My name is Andrew Callahan and I'm the Vice President for the student body.
Now, with everybody gearing up for another academic year, we wanted to show you guys what we're most excited to get back to on campus.
So without further ado, we're going to do that right now.
You could come by the annex, stop and grab a coffee.
Or maybe buy some food.
Plus, you can come say hi to Anto. Come catch some sun while you hit the books in the atrium. Adulting can be hard.
So come to the student development desk for help on adulting. Gotta take care of your health, so come by the health office.
Always dreamed of becoming a YouTuber? Come check out our student studio. And if you don't have your own equipment, not to worry. The multimedia office has got you covered.
You can come by the Student Media Center, where you can join one of our student publications or the AUP radio show. They say teamwork makes the dream work, so come do your next project in our group study rooms.
Or you could come hit the books and study in one of the most scenic spots in Paris, right here on our very own campus.
Alright, that was just the very beginning, but we're going to let you guys explore the rest of this once you get here to campus.
So, on behalf of all of the staff, faculty, and students here at AUP, we can't wait to welcome you to campus next week. We'll see you guys real soon.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Bienvenue and welcome.
Welcome. Welcome. Welcome.
Welcome. Welcome.
Welcome to the AUP family.
Part of each academic year, our students, their parents, and our wider community are distributed across the world's 24 time zones. This is a symptom of our family of global explorers. My name is Tim Rogers. I'm the Director of Enrollment Management and one of the Vice Presidents here at AUP. This exceptional incoming class joining the American University of Paris for its 59th fall has been a delight to work with over the last 12 months. I can confidently speak for all of my admissions colleagues, both in the US and in France, that we have never known students and parents as well as we know all of you. Zoom has much to answer for. How can I characterize this incoming class? As usual, and people expect me to do this, I could use some data, but that will lose some of the nuance of this wonderful class, but it doesn't stop me. Sure, you represent 55 incoming countries. 58% of you speak 2, 3, or more languages. 23% of you have 2, 3, or more passports, and 75% of you have a GPA of 3.0 and above. For us, the best measure of this class is that 95% of you were graded on our admissions fit scale as a 5, a 4, or a 3. But as an admissions person, I have to channel my inner marketeer and speak of the classic marketing matrix of the 4 Ps. But for this AUP class, I use perseverance, persistence, patience, and passion. These are the P words we are allowed to use. We start this fall semester with incredible students. We have entering students who are the first in their family ever to go to university. We have students who have volunteered with communities all over the world and have done particularly strong work in countries as diverse as Germany, Greece, Italy, Kenya, the US, and Palestine. We have students whose first flight ever will be their flight to Paris. We have students who have jumped and hauled themselves over every possible hurdle put in their way over the last couple of months so they can begin and continue their academic journey with us in Paris. They have managed consulates closing, consulates opening, consulates closing. They have managed to navigate confinements, deconfinements, last-minute changes to immigration policy, more changes to new immigration policy, and reversals of even newer immigration policy. We have students who are still waiting for their first ever passport, but will be here with us later this week or early next week. We have a German living in Singapore, coming to study in Paris through our partner program in Los Angeles. And we have students who have overcome crisis, natural disaster, and a global health emergency to make their way to their new home in Paris. My last official duty with this incoming class is to formally hand them over to the university as matriculated students. And I would, in that context, like to introduce President Schenck, the President of AUP. President Schenck, it gives me extraordinary pleasure to present this extraordinary class in these extraordinary times to you.
Thank you, Tim. So I want to begin by saluting the particularly hardy group of first-year, partner, visiting, transfer, and graduate students who are joining us in Paris this week for the start of the new academic year. Tim's already referred to all the obstacles you've encountered en route, and yet that didn't stop you. You and we will never forget fall 2020. At the same time, I want to greet today all the members of the global AUP family, faculty and staff who are watching this, current students, parents, friends, board members, our US-based admissions and advancement staffs, and alumni tuning in from all over the world, who are joining us today to welcome the 59th entering class since the college's founding in 1962, and to celebrate with us the start of your academic lives at the American University of Paris. Making the choice to come in spite of everything that stood in your way makes each of you, members of our entering class, a very special kind of AUP Global Explorer. It is my great honor and delight, I might add, to open formally with my colleagues here the 2021 academic year. This year began in the shadow of COVID, as we all know, is like none other, and we are prepared for its inevitable uncertainties and challenges, supported by a highly competent and centralized French public health authority. But today, I really don't want to talk about masks and social distancing and testing and tracing, about which you've heard much from us and about which you'll hear much more. While we all pledge this year to protect our community, the very special bubble that is AUP, in our every choice and repeated commitment to healthy behavior, we are also going to be engaging wholeheartedly in the activities that make universities the unparalleled learning environments that they are. Fierce marketplaces of ideas, often contradictory, stages for civil exchanges, sometimes heated and passionate, and personal development and growth on the part of anyone who is a full participant in his or her own education. I want to open 2021 by sharing with you a few ideas about the kind of global learning community that you are entering formally today, its ambitions, its future, and its values. This year is both an end and a beginning for AUP, the end of a 5-year strategic plan and the launch of a new one, the end of a 2-term, highly successful board chairmanship of Raymond Henze, and the beginning of Doris Donay's new and already vibrant term as chair. The end of our 10-year reaccreditation cycle and the start of the next. In this liminal space between 2 chapters of our history, we are reflecting about what kind of institution we want to be 5 years from now, and taking on ever bolder projects to get there. Some of the highlights of the last 5 years include the identification of our ideal student, the Global Explorer, of which each of you from 100 nations is a shining example, the renovation of virtually every single building on our campus and the acquisition of our stunning flagship Learning Commons on the Seine, the creation of a student residential life program, our first capital campaign, the development of a holistic learning model that includes deep liberal arts learning and hands-on applications of that learning, the integrating of academic achievement and career exploration throughout a student's entire trajectory. The articulation of learning outcomes for all AUP students via defined core competencies, a new core curriculum, and a global professional skills, we call it GPS, program. And I also don't want to forget our vastly extended academic reputation and reach that comes through the productivity of our faculty with their extraordinary talent for academic convocation. And also, finally, but not least, the founding of 5 research centers encouraging interdisciplinary, career-enhancing, mentored scholarship for our students in areas of faculty strength and transnational importance. Their subjects are practically a list of our values: critical democracy studies, advocacy for the environment, writing as cultural translation, the study of genocide, human rights, and conflict prevention, and then the dire need at this historical moment for a civic media. In the coming years, we're going to be just as taken up with this noble work of AUP Ascending. A number of big projects beckon in response to curricular needs and pressure on campus, such as the renovation of our old library as a center for the arts, to include everything from studios to classrooms, from a lithography lab to student exhibition space, from faculty offices to our first 80-person auditorium. The nearly 400% growth of art history and the fine arts in recent years, the ascent of film studies as one of our 2 fastest growing majors, along with history, law, and society, has made dedicated space for the plastic and performing arts absolutely mission critical. The very democratic nature of the arts, binding us together by transcending cultural, linguistic, national, and even ideological boundaries to remind us how human and very alike we actually are, despite our apparent differences, is a joy to behold on the walls and various stages and common rooms of our campus. As soon as we're finished raising the money for the renovation, that final piece of work on our campus plan will begin. But our most important responsibility and task ahead is to renew our curriculum, both undergraduate and graduate. Our Provost William Fisher, from whom you'll be hearing next, will, along with our dedicated faculty, lead the work of integrating all the parts of our 21st century hybrid and holistic curriculum, the better to help all of our students navigate new pathways that will bring together their intellectual interests and their personal passions. This, in ways, I firmly believe, that will help the world heal its wounds and bring a shared global future within our reach. 3 sets of values will govern our choices on the coming stretch of our work: diversity, environmental sustainability, and global interdependence. We intend in the years that come to achieve a community, a campus, and a curriculum that honor true diversity and inclusion, and that permit us to make significant strides in environmental sustainability. Our work formulating policy and practice in these 2 areas will be guided by faculty, staff, student advisory boards that report directly to the president and the provost. One such faculty member addresses you today in 2 of these capacities, and that's Michelle Kuo, who will characteristically not talk about herself, but about her students. She is the Pied Piper at the head of our History, Law, and Society major, and also an elected faculty leader on AUP's new Diversity Council. She holds a JD degree from Harvard Law School and is the author of a remarkable book on literacy, law, and the U.S. incarceration system called Reading with Patrick, and I enjoin you to read it. She embodies powerful teaching, engaged scholarship, and mentorship of students at its most dedicated, and we are all proud that she'll be giving the faculty address today at Convocation and introduce you to some of our current students, including the one who will follow her live, Jasmine Cowen. To finish with my review of our guiding principles for the next strategic plan, let me return to the notion of the global that so infuses everything we do at AUP, but most importantly, who we are. American in our pedagogy and curricular structures, in our academic traditions, our belief in open debate and dialogue within the frame of civility and responsible community, AUP is also European and French, more pointedly. And in the years ahead, we intend to deepen our European and global identities and outreach. In today's world, all of our identities, personal and institutional, are complex, overlapping, and multiple, something that we recognize every single day on our campus, and that you, our new students, will come to own and to honor. I invite each of you to come inside the remarkable space of learning that is the American University of Paris, in which students learn as much from each other, as much from the experience of living in a country that is not their own, even our French students, as they do from their courses. I exhort you to come with an open mind, with a resolve to have permeable boundaries, to be open to influence, to entertain good ideas wherever they come from, to be willing always to question your own assumptions. May you, the members of our 59th entering class, make the sometime discomfort of being not at home into a pearl, becoming in the process someone on whom nothing is lost, no experience, no exchange, no relationship, and no opportunity to become, during your years at AUP, the best possible version of yourselves. I cede now to Provost William Fisher, our Chief Academic Officer and EVP for Academic Affairs.
Thank you, President Schenck. Thank you all for joining us. I look forward to partnering with all of you in the year ahead as we work together to advance the mission of the American University of Paris. Convocation is an opportunity to reinforce for all of us that we are part of a community of learning, of personal growth, and of responsibility to one another. Now more than ever, we must be united as one university to keep our community members safe and our spirit strong. I'm thrilled to be back at AUP and excited as we begin this next semester. It certainly has been an eventful 2020 so far, with the challenges brought on by COVID-19 added to what was already a very challenging sequence of events in the last academic year. All of us have been stunned by how dramatically different the world seems now than it did a year ago, or even 6 months ago. It's shocking that in such a short period of time, everyday norms, things we took for granted, are no more. We lived through 2 months of confinement in Paris. We went through 5 months of working remotely. And those of us whose lives normally involved a great deal of travel, of international travel, found it odd to spend months without leaving Paris, months barely leaving our apartments. All of this will frame your experiences, whether you're entering as first-year students just beginning your journey through college, or returning students at different points along your educational pathways, or as professors venturing upon new teaching challenges. Finding your own way along educational pathways is always challenging and stimulating, always full of unique opportunities and choices, and this year perhaps even more challenging than ever. Like most of our staff and faculty, I spent much of the summer thinking about how to prepare for this year and how COVID-19 might affect our work. Personally, I was elated when confinement finally lifted, and while still working remotely, I was able to work remotely from a house somewhere else in France. It was great at the end of the day to be able to walk out of the house and head into the hills for long walks, and somewhere early in my stay, I set off after a day of walking for a long walk to a sanctuary of a Catholic saint, Saint Jean, that was miles away. I'd hiked this trail before, years before, and I was confident that I knew the way. It may have been that I was distracted, thinking about how we were going to prepare for the fall 2020 semester, or that my mind was more on what remote and hybrid learning pedagogies we would need to introduce for the fall semester, and more on those things than it was on paying attention to the path. But in any case, at some point, I shook off my thoughts about teaching methodologies and began to notice that everything around me seemed unfamiliar and strange, and that the substantial path I had started on had now become barely a path at all, just a narrow trail through the underbrush, and I had clearly lost my way. So through my head, I ran through all the platitudes that we normally tell you about journeys and pathways. Even so, it didn't seem very comforting as the sun began to set. Take the road less traveled by, ran through my head. Well, I'd certainly done that. There's not one path. There's no right path. There's only your path. Again, apt, but at that point I would have settled for the right path. Don't follow the path, blaze the trail, we often say to you. Well, that was clearly what I was doing then. To be lost is as much as part of the process as finding your way or being found. Yeah, maybe, but at that moment, I just wanted to find my way. But in the end, as I thought about these thoughts, they actually calmed me down, and as I walked, I began to pay less attention to my concerns about reaching my destination, or the destination I thought I had to reach, and began to enjoy just where I was and what I was doing. I continued walking with a different frame of mind. It's hard to describe exactly, but what came to my mind was a scene from The Little Rascals, an American series of short comedy films from the 1920s that was in reruns on television when I was young. And in the scene, I began to remember two of the young children who are always getting into mischief, Stymie and Dickie, are in some sort of contraption. It's some sort of a makeshift pretend fire truck that they've slapped together. They tied a rope to a delivery truck so that they could get pulled to the top of the hill. But just when they get past the top of the hill, the rope breaks, and they're sent rolling downhill at incredible speed without any brakes, with two others of their companions on board. And Dickie cries out, "Stymie, where are we going?" And Stymie replies very calmly, "I don't know where we're going, brother, but we're on our way." And we're on our way this semester. Reflecting on those little rascals led me back to thinking about the challenges that students face when embarking on educational pathways. The most valuable pathways are often full of the unexpected, and at times a lot of uncertainty. And this semester may be just like that, full of the unexpected. We may not know where we're going, but we are on our way. But we are not careening downhill without brakes, and we are better prepared for uncertainty and the unexpected than were Stymie and Dickie. As for your educational journeys this year, they may take you to unexpected places. You may encounter unexpected obstacles. At times, there may be a lot of uncertainty. But your advisors, your mentors, your teachers will all be there to help you navigate your ways, to show you the signposts, and to help you be prepared at every point. And while this world we live in sometimes seems to get increasingly stranger, I'm still excited about so many things. People to meet, goals to achieve, and with Convocation comes renewed energy, a sense that anything is possible, a glee to take new steps along our individual and collective journeys. It may seem like a very challenging and overwhelmingly unpredictable time to be going to school, but it's really an amazing time. You're not unlucky. I think that in many ways you're fortunate. And why do I say that? At a time when we have to communicate wearing masks and sit at designated distances from one another in the classroom, and with some of our peers, and even occasionally the professor attending remotely, all of these constraints force us to pay more attention to how we listen to others, how we overcome distances, and the ways we can more intentionally build community. You enter school this semester at a time when your professors are re-examining everything they thought they knew about how to teach and how students learn. It's a time of more experimentation, more intentionally new and effective methodologies. And at a time when the fragility of life has been underscored rather than glossed over, when our interconnectedness is clear and thus our collective responsibilities to one another. COVID has forced us to re-examine everything, to challenge assumptions, to find new and more effective ways of interacting, listening, learning, teaching, and collaborating. And it's not just COVID. The protests for social justice and social equality in the United States, in France, and elsewhere, protests against sexual harassment and gender inequality, protests for collective global action on global change, all make this an amazing time to be in college. The problems of the world are glaringly apparent, as is the need for substantive change, and there has never been a better time to prepare oneself to meet the real challenges of our time and to change our world for the better. Now it's my honor to introduce our faculty speaker for Convocation, Professor Michelle Kuo. She is the coordinator of our dynamic History, Law, and Society program and teaches on issues related to social justice, race, punishment, immigration, and the law.
Thank you so much for those generous words, and welcome to all the students here. Let me begin by asking a question that may be inappropriate for a welcoming ceremony. Why go to college right now? I will answer, forgive me, by listing a few of the unprecedented historic burdens that fall on your shoulders. A global pandemic with 880,000 deaths, many that could have been prevented by competent governments. Unprecedented wealth inequality with vulnerable workers across the world who live with no social support. Indisputable, omnipresent proof of ecological disaster. The west coast of the United States is on fire right now. Water is polluted and scarce. Species are going extinct. Some villages are already underwater and other island nations may sink. A system that solves social problems by incarcerating and caging people. The United States holds 5% of the world population, but 25% of its prison population. Massive displacement as a result of military intervention, due in part to America's war on terror. 37 million people in Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, the Philippines, Libya, and Syria have lost everything. They have fled drone strikes and artillery fire and live precariously in refugee camps. China has incarcerated 1 million Muslim Uyghurs, including children, without trial, borrowing in part from America's rhetorical and legal tactics against terrorism. It claims that they are terrorists or future terrorists. Some Uyghurs are coerced to produce cotton and other products sold by multinational corporations. All are forced to disavow their religion. Ours is a world of borders where refugees seeking a better life face barbed wire fences and heavily armed police. Under both George W. Bush and Obama, governments closed off routes in order to make migrants cross through dangerous territory where they were likely to encounter violence, starve, or die of thirst. The Trump administration has separated children from their parents, keeping them in cages as a way to say, stop coming or we will take what is most precious to you. And ours is a world where you can go to jail for trying to help. The captain of a German ship rescued refugees at sea and was arrested in Italy. In some parts of the United States, you can be charged with, quote, abandonment of property for leaving out water and canned food for somebody who might need them to survive. This is the world you inherit. So what's the good news? The good news is that across history and across continents, from Africa to Asia to the Middle East to the Western Hemisphere, college students in particular have been the soul of movements that have created transformative change. Students no older than you have successfully agitated against imperialism, against apartheid, against social and cultural repression. They have toppled regimes. They have stopped wars. They have helped organize human chains of protest in Eastern Europe in 1989, in Hong Kong 3 decades later. The best book I read this summer was by the sociologist Charles Payne about the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, in the 1960s. People your age, including James Forman, Bob Zellner, Diane Nash, John Lewis, who traveled to the rural South to help register disenfranchised African American voters. As Payne sees it, the quote, dramatic imagery we associate with the civil rights movement, marches ending with fire hoses and police dogs and police violence, fails to take into account the student organizer who went back to talk to a frightened farmer over and over and over, or the student who took a local person to the voting test 11 times before she passed. Payne reminds us not to undervalue the, quote, patient and sustained effort, the slow, respectful work that made the dramatic moments possible. Why are young people so often the soul of these movements? This summer, I asked some AUP students this question, and here is what you said. You care less about status and reputation. You have less to lose. You have less fear. You're ready to get up and travel to where there is need. You're ready to sleep on couches and floors. You're not yet worn down by the world. You don't take the status quo as given. You don't accept it when suffering is rationalized. This is your power. College is not the only way to cultivate that power, but I do believe that it is a sacred and rare place. No other space, besides perhaps the free press, holds liberty of thought as an express aim. No other space, besides the monastery, nourishes the spirituality of inner life. The Czech writer Václav Havel wrote that the inner life is where propaganda dies, where we carry memory and complexity and ambiguity. No other space lets friendship sprout so wildly, so spontaneously from the shared love of books, of ideas, of philosophy, of art. No other space allows contradictory pursuits to collide and coexist so naturally. You rest and agitate, love and argue, read alone and work together. College is a place of solitude and collective action, of refuge and revolution. A classroom, even a virtual one, asks us to listen to and reflect on the words of one another. The mystic Simone Weil wrote that if we bring the attention of prayer to everything we do, we can transform ourselves and our world. Whether we call it prayer or meditation or concentration, this capacity is crucial. It opens us up to one another. It opens us up to love. It teaches us to ask, what are you going through? This too is your power, to make friends not with the most popular person, but the least, to engage those who seem shy and uncertain, to seek, as a legendary organizer Ella Baker put it, not so much to be a leader, but to develop leadership in others. It is for all these reasons, by the way, freedom of thought, inner life, passionate friendship, that universities are often the first to be targeted by authoritarian regimes. We need look no further today than Turkey, Hungary, Russia. Havel, who spent 5 years in prison for dissident activities before becoming president of Czechoslovakia, talks about the need to live within the truth. To live within the truth is a moral act. It is to refuse a world of consumer seduction, totalitarian logic, and general demoralization. It is to learn how others live across geography and time, to practice solidarity with those who have walked this earth before you, to ask yourself, am I on the right side of history? When I'm running low on hope, I talk to my students. I ask what drives them, what propels them. Let me share with you what a few have told me. A Malaysian Indian student worked at a gas station to come here because his parents did not support his wish to study the social sciences. Growing up, he volunteered at a restaurant that served free meals to anybody who came. A person who could only pay 50 cents for a meal might come back a few months later and pay more. He said to me, quote, "We welcomed homeless people, migrant workers, undocumented people. It didn't matter who you were or whether you had money. The policy was you deserve to be fed, you deserve to eat, you deserve dignity." In Sanskrit, he told me this belief is Atiti Devo Bhava, the guest is God. I love that. The guest is God. A daughter of Haitian immigrants told me that what drives her is her family history. Her grandfather, an outspoken critic of the Duvalier regime, was arrested, tortured, and disappeared when his baby daughter, my student's mother, was just 3 months old. This student came to Paris because her widowed Catholic grandmother dreamt of seeing Notre Dame in Sacré-Cœur. When my student got to the Sacré-Cœur, she said she cried because her grandma couldn't be there, but she knew how proud she would have been. Another student, quiet and shy, but burning with an inner fire, told me during office hours that she was most afraid of, quote, living a life without purpose. In her time at AUP, she volunteered with 7 other students to help detained migrants apply for asylum. She later told me that the experience had made her braver in seeking ways to be involved, and that she couldn't have done it without her fellow students. She graduated last year and went home to Arizona. Now she works at the Florence Project, getting children out of detention. A recent case involved a 17-year-old who had been jailed for 7 months for crossing the border. He was so dejected at one point, she said, that he wanted to abandon his case and go back to Honduras, even though gang members were waiting there to kill him. By patient and sustained effort, she and her team worked to get him out. In June, he was released. When she met him at the Greyhound station, he told her it had been 4 months since he had breathed fresh air. She gave him a backpack full of food, water, masks, and clothes, and watched him board a bus to New Orleans, where he plans to enroll in community college. Today, for now, he is free. These are young people in the world who are living within the truth. This is what the power of youth and the capacities of attention and reflection can accomplish. I hope you experience this during your time at AUP and long after. I now have the joy of introducing Jasmine Cowen. I had the privilege of meeting her in the classroom 2 years ago and was struck by her humble, insightful presence, her broad curiosity. She is a major in history and a minor in global communications, and her senior thesis topic is Buddhist funeral rites during Japanese internment. She speaks Japanese, French, and English, and she's the AUP student delegate for the Athens Democracy Forum. She's embraced many opportunities at AUP, including a 2-week study trip to Taiwan, a study trip to Venice, and a course in which AUP students learn alongside incarcerated students in a French prison. Jasmine is an editor of a student magazine and is heavily involved with the History Law and Society Executive Board. She's been critical to organizing dialogues and actions related to racial justice on and off campus. She's been active in Black Lives Matter in Japan, and I am just so delighted and honored that we get to hear from her. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kuo. When I was a sophomore at AUP, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that seemed to dictate my life. While thousands of miles away from my family, I lost control over my body, which made me feel like I had lost my grip on the world. Before that, I had a work hard, play hard mentality. I barely gave myself the chance to breathe, as being in Paris gave me a newfound sense of freedom. But when I was diagnosed, I felt like my body and energy were withering away. I didn't tell my parents I was sick. I was afraid they would call me home if they knew how weak I had felt. I didn't tell many people either. I only mentioned it to a couple of close friends and my professors out of necessity. I felt separated from the world around me. Treatments were intensive, involving frequent trips to the hospital. The more I was drawn away from school, and the more difficult it became to balance treatments with my studies, the more I yearned to be back in the classroom. It forced me to reflect on the things I loved about AUP, the small class sizes, the rich diversity in thought, the ability to participate in cross-cultural exchanges in every classroom. Until I started to be taken away from the classroom by doctor's appointments and fatigue, I don't think I understood the extent to which I had taken my access to education for granted. I found that the only thing that grounded me was studying. My own perception started to change. I became captivated by studying the histories of social and cultural transformations across the world, from Rigoberta Menchu's indigenous movements in Guatemala to Frantz Fanon's theories on decolonization to the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong. I studied how historical figures had revolutionized their lived realities. Even though I was alone in my room, I could be part of revolutions around the world. I also began to think about my parents. They had not gone to university. They had not had the privilege of entering a space dedicated to growth and knowledge. Attending an institution of higher education meant that I had access to resources and opportunities that my parents and grandparents never had. I remembered the words of a professor from my freshman year who told us to appreciate that college might be the only chance we have to immerse ourselves in our studies to the deepest extent. When the pandemic came to France last spring, I watched as the world around me was also forced to consider health in every daily movement. Illness is frightening. It's invisible, unpredictable, and isolating. But even during times of fear, my place in the AUP community was a crucial component of how I began to restructure my life. As students at AUP, we have access to tremendous resources for both your physical and mental health. If I could give one piece of advice to incoming students, I would advise you to reach out to our mental health resources when you need them. I came from a cultural background that really stigmatized therapy, but taking care of my mental health became crucial to being able to succeed academically. We're also incredibly privileged to have the support of faculty and staff who are flexible and empathetic in their teaching. To be a student at this time is to navigate learning during a pandemic, but it is also to consider our place in the fight against systemic racism that has galvanized new forms of struggle throughout the globe. Throughout the summer, I have been deeply moved by the student-led initiatives which asked AUP to grapple with its own racial inequalities. I spent the past 4 months in Japan where I worked to co-organize for Black Lives Matter in Kyoto, and I was so moved to meet teachers, youth activists, and peace organizers in Japan who cared about social justice. I will continue to ask myself how we can translate digital activism into lasting change, how we can incorporate racial and economic justice into our classes, and how we can create a more inclusive and responsive AUP community. As we start the new semester, I am hopeful we will take care of one another. Our ability to remain in classes rests on the efforts we all put in to maintain a safe campus. During this pandemic, carelessness could lead to detrimental consequences in our small community. I welcome our incoming class and encourage everyone to continue working and studying with critical engagement, empathy, and kindness. I'll now pass the podium back to President Schenck.
We have one final formal thing to do, which is to declare this academic year open, but we also wish that every one of you were present with us today. And so to make you present, we're going to roll the credits, as it were, and in front of your very eyes have the names of each of you and the place you hail from. Roll. That was so moving.